Okay, awesome, Balaji. Great to have you here today, and yeah, I look forward to our conversation. Yeah, so we've spoken in the past. I know you well for last many years now, but generally for the audience, would love to start with a little introduction. If you can tell us
Absolutely.
about yourself, right, and what has been the journey so far with Fast, that you've been running this for 15 years, bootstrapped it. That's that's not very common these days in the valley, especially, right, of people bootstrapping a company for 15 years, and now you're trying to do Studiobit uh, with AI into it, right? So I would just love to understand for the audience if you can walk us through that journey from where you started, where you are today, and where Studiobit is headed for. So over to you, Balaji.
Absolutely. Now, first of all, thanks for having me on your show. Delighted to be here. So, my journey started in the startup space when I first came to the States. Um, Worked for a few companies, then moved into San Diego, where we had this fun startup where we were building rooftop network, and we were trying to do. This was 20 years ago, mind you, when Wi-Fi was the it was still in its infancy, and we were trying to blanket San Diego downtown with Wi-Fi and stream video. I've always been in the audio video streaming because that's what fascinates me, and it's the low latency aspect of it, and there's a lot of work that's been done over years. And so that's how I started. And unfortunately, that startup went belly up within a couple of years because it was equipment is very expensive to install, and we used to get it from Canada and install it, and that was a nightmare getting a license and permit and all kind of stuff, right? So it kind of hardware install. I think the second startup where much of my current this was attributed to the founder of that company, Alex Rusich. He took me under, and I got to learn a lot of bootstrap with the bootstrap concept because I learned all the foundational elements of how to bootstrap something. And last time, uh, share for financial advisors and compliance and email archival. Right? They kind of cornered that industry. Eventually, they sold to Symantec. This is all public information. Um, then we came out of that. Again, at that time, I also learned that the concept of incubation, right? So we were having this this company that's making revenue, but inside there's a small unit where we were running a lot of conferencing. And in fact, one of the first products we had was against WebEx. It's an IM conferencing that we were playing with. So eventually, again, long story short, moved out of that. Again, still in the space, but with much more business side knowledge and product knowledge. And we started this. That's how Vast Communications, which is almost a 16-year-old company now, we kind of bootstrapped and grew from there. That's kind of the story. And then post-COVID, something dramatically changed. And we all know everybody got forced to be in front of the camera, right? You cannot escape it, right? People didn't want to go on live. Even now, I'm nervous. So just sitting in front of the camera makes people nervous, right? But COVID did that to everybody, right? They say, okay, there is a change that happened. As soon as that happened for a few months, people upgraded the internet, and then they started thinking, I am in front of my camera, I am now relaxed, then I am my own brand. It's not the consumer side I'm talking about. I'm talking more about the business side people too, right? Everybody got in front of camera. So now they're starting to create content, all these markets. Studiobit came into being. We wanted, again, there were players, StreamYard, Hopin was there. I think there, and then you have Riverside. There's so we play in the same space. How are we different? Why are we even doing this, right? We kind of, because we are audio video guys, we wanted to make the professional studio multiple elements of this come to you in front of you in a browser in a packaged form, easy to use, right? From creation to distribution, how can you handle everything in a workflow basis without parting with multiple subscriptions to 10 different places? Like you have to go to Canva for this and Figma for that, and then OBS Studio for this. And I mean, people use half a dozen tools to get there. So that's the birth of Studiobit. And here we are 3 years later with a mature platform.
Awesome, awesome. So Balaji, some follow-up questions. So 15 years back, obviously you had some background in communications, like you said. Getting into the conferencing space, right? It was a very nascent stage. The tech industry has not seen blitzscaling at the levels, right, we saw maybe in the late 2010s, right? And then you are here
Yeah.
today, right? So can you share some insights in terms of when you started with that product? What was that initial vision? Who were you targeting it for? And where did you land up 10 years, 5 years, right? If you can, like certain milestones, that will really help for people to understand, right? Like what was the journey like?
Absolutely. I think just like, I mean, anybody starting at any arbitrary point in time, you're always faced with two players in the market competing against them. So you always try to find what's your niche. I think at that time, WebEx, Raindance, those were the bigger players. But a lot of people want a simple to use interface that manage. They want to pay up the expensive white glove service they could get if you go to AT&T conference, or I mean, it was very expensive. And then there is the WebEx of the world, which one of the reasons, let me take a step back. One of the reasons why we gave up on the web conferencing and just went telephone conferencing first was it took so much time to train that person to be on the computer doing web conferencing 20 years ago. The cost, they didn't make any sense there's no ROI, because by the time you walk them, you have to educate them. You have to make sure that they understand what they're doing, antivirus, they install problems, all kind of stuff, right? So we kind of went to the features and looked at what is the minimal set people use very often. Like a lot of people wanted to manage their calls, they were still managing with their phone keystrokes, right? And we brought that to web, and that was our first version of conferencing, where it's very simple. If you are a person who manages your conference call through keystrokes, now you can see everything, you can do everything on the web, you can manage your calls. That's where we carved our space out of this particular mature industry at that point. Of course, WebEx still existed, but there's a lot of people who just wanted to do like, can I get on the call? Can I talk to a bunch of people? Can I mute somebody? I mean, it's very basic features. I don't need to read a 400-page manual to learn that. So we went after simplicity and the quality, right? These are the two things we went to. The quality of the call was like, was very good because we went and worked with the major telco providers. Often at times we had to be co-located or even very close to them so that we get the quality and things don't travel through the internet, kind of. Those are the things that made it work.
Awesome. So basically, I didn't know this. So you started with a teleconferencing and not the web conferencing. That was the starting point, is it? Wow. So that's a long way, right? Where
Correct.
you go today, and now coming to Studiobit, like you mentioned, COVID especially, right, kind of accelerated this whole content creation economy, right? Has gone like bonkers, right, over the last couple of years, and it's a
Right.
huge industry. Everyone knows that. So my point is, and you are trying to optimize for workflow from what you explained earlier, right?
Right.
And I face that experience personally, because when I do these events and otherwise as well, so I am playing swivel chair between LinkedIn, I use Zoom, and I have to use some editing software to get all of these three combined before I can create something and post it on a Sunday night, right? Of all the stuff that we
Mhm.
talk. And now with AI, it is getting better. So you get your summarizations and all that stuff, right? Cool stuff that comes out of it. And there are a lot of people now that are trying to get into this ecosystem, right? So can you explain a little more in terms of who your ideal customer is here? Because there are so many platforms and products out there, right? From the Looms of the world to YouTube's to LinkedIn Live, right? and Vimo, right? There's enough of them, right? So where is Studiobit different, and who are you targeting?
Absolutely. So when we look at the creator economy, you can see three distinct um, marketplaces. One I would call the mobile creator economy, right? So people who have their mobile phones as the primary means to create and distribute content, right? That's the TikToks, the Instagrams, Facebook Live, and other things, right? Then comes the desktop creator, which is what we are focused on. And the last one is more advanced technical folks, right? They have hardware gear, they use some specialized software to actually, you can become event producers or more mature uh, uh, content creators, right? So these, between these three, we focus on the desktop economy, right? Which is basically anybody with a desktop that has decent power, right? Which most desktops do these days, to just like you are, right? So now you are actually producing content from your own desktop with your custom backgrounds and branding and everything that shows up here. Um, that's the market you want to focus. And that's where it's an evolving marketplace because, like I said, after COVID, everybody realized that they are their brand. So let me take that apart, right? So, for example, you are a knowledge worker, you are in your 30s to 40s, right? You have built up enough knowledge that you yourself part time is a brand. Now you can attest to other things and you can talk about things. And there you see a lot of these coming up more and more because they are feeling that they can share their knowledge and benefit from it too, right? Um, then comes the marketing departments, right? Now they don't have this requirement now to get sophisticated tools to create content anymore. If you combine AI, you can actually have what do you call you and the avatar actually have a conversation and create some fun content that you were not able to create before. So the key here is either you are creating by yourself or in a collaborative fashion like we are doing right now. There is demand towards a simple, easy to use workflows, either with your company or with your other outside vendors to just collaboratively create this content. It is another thing that blew up after your COVID, right? People are creating content, education content within the company. More insurance companies, right? They have this requirement that they have to keep them up to date. The doctors, all these people, now they don't have to deal with 10 different tools to stitch it together. It's not complicated. Just sit in front of your desktop, invite someone, start material, and AI is here. Thank God. Again, we did not have the we started really cannot go mainstream right yet. Again, AI has been there for 40 years, 30 years or 40 years, but with November 2022, with ChatGPT going live, right? That's when it actually came to the forefront. We started way before, right? Why is Studiobit unique? We have a native distribution platform. The platform is completely built as a layer on top of a cloud platform, right? So essentially, we own and operate everything. Thereby, Studiobit has a unique capability that we can tap into the flow of things at any point from glass to glass. Like for example, from the time the light enters the camera on your side to the time it shows up on my monitor, I can tap into any point because we own and operate all of those components, right? We just use the cloud as a distribution and compute layer, right? That's why we feel very confident that whatever AI brings in, we are going to inject it to all these flows, right? We have already done a couple where we can take, after your show is done, you will see that you get a transcription and then you can go click a button and topic wise divided, right? Every question you ask, you don't need to do any work. You just click a button and then you're going to get clips on every question answer, because now AI is able to go look into it and say, hey, this looks like a segment. This looks like a segment. So you can actually individually distribute shorts. There is this, people are realizing, right? People who create short form suddenly are now moving to long form, because there's demand there, and people who
Right.
are doing long form go to short form because there's demand there. So people want all these forms eventually, right? It's just not one format that's
Right.
good. So that's what we are trying to get, right? You can get to any format. More importantly, Studiobit, you should be able to put it all together to create evergreen content eventually, right? So you should be able to pull things from back to a year ago. If it's relevant, pull that clip into the latest clip, mix and mash, right?
Absolutely. Well, I think those are very valuable use cases, and definitely, I think that's where the whole content sharing and consumption is happening. Can you walk us a little bit in terms of Studiobit journey itself? Like, when did you guys conceptualize this? How long has it been in works, and where are you with it? And what are the future milestones?
Oh, that's a good one. So Studiobit, again, COVID hit. Everybody was in a panic mode, right? We were in panic mode. Everybody got sent home. We are moving offices to data centers. Um, we had tremendous demand come through because everybody has to use phones eventually, and even the Zooms of the world could not. At that point in time, they ran out of telephone lines, right? Essentially, everybody gets so we had this all this excess capacity. We were doing like 1,000-person calls because people had to get on the call, inform everybody else. But once that was through, within a few months, you are realizing this is not real, right? This demand is going to go away way before. I'm sure everybody in the industry knew, right? Within a year, this is going to recede
Right.
so fast that you have to do something. So
Exactly.
now comes the panic again, right? You have to go start up again. You have to do something to pivot and do something different because the marketplace is going to disappear slowly because all that surge brought more competition into play, right? So you look what happened, like Microsoft Teams probably now packages web conferencing literally for pennies over a dollar, right?
Yeah.
So we kind of saw that and we said, okay, we're not pivoting towards something become, and when that point comes time, we should already have another metric. So that's what started was fun stuff like watch parties. I don't know whether you did that. Everybody was
Yeah.
alone and siloed, and we wanted to watch a movie together, right?
Yes. Yeah.
That was the very first prototype. It's not even close to what you're seeing now, but that's where I started, right? Okay, how can we do a watch party just purely from browser and have my mom or somebody else look at it using my own tool,
Right.
right? And that because we were doing video, it was kind of easy enough to stitch together through the browser, so I can um, share basically my screen on the desktop with some content that I can broadcast live. Somebody else can watch it with me. But eventually it grew to this full-on platform. That's how we started. That was, you can call it in many ways, it's a proof of concept, right?
Hmm.
Everybody says, okay, you don't take more than 2 to 3 months. You just have to prove it out. Once I had that, then we did this test as to, is this even economically viable,
Hmm.
right? You have to make sure that you're not losing money. This is another piece of advice to everybody starting today, right? You can see TechCrunch article coming out. I started this company with the Versal marketing website builder or whatever product builder, and my product blew up. And within a week, I'm getting a bill for $100,000. I have no idea how this happened. You know,
Yeah.
the tools are so easy. They just don't advertise the built-in costs of Amazon Lambda functions or server-side functions or this function or that function. So long story short, I always do my due diligence before we go scale this thing, right? What does it even cost per feed, per byte, or per bit, or per megabit, or whatever your unit is?
Right.
It's going to be profitable.
Right. No, I think those are very valuable lessons there, Balaji, especially with bootstrapping. You have to watch your pennies, right? Otherwise, it kind of just runs very fast, especially with cloud consumption, because it's not something sitting in front of you and you don't realize. Back in the day, you could go check on your server, right? It's getting hot, slowing down. You will ask users to log off and all that stuff doesn't happen anymore, right? With elastic scaling.
Right.
Very valuable.
Even if you are right, even if you are now, if you're going asking for funding, think of, I would recommend everybody think in terms of leverages, right? So this is one of the things, if you did your homework, it is not leverageable by the other party to take more from you, right? Because everybody knows, if you look at the how you operate, the cost is obvious, and then that's another leverageable point, and you have to cough up more of your share to get more money, right?
Right.
So as a founder, I want to keep as much as I can, if I
Correct.
can, right? Yes, you want to get money, but how can you remove a lot of these leverageable things and do your homework before you get there to raise funds?
Right. So someone trying to get in here, Balaji, and trying to maybe get into this whole content economy and trying to build something, right? What would you recommend? So you have a lot of technical background. Obviously, you understand the nuances. But imagine someone from a business side comes into this, right? Has no experience of building a streaming platform or anything to do with video or anything to do with telephony, right? Is there a way for a person to make an entry, and how would they go about it? Any thoughts?
Well, I think I'll answer that with the perspective of the AI coming into play, right?
Hmm.
So when you think about AI, anybody who's starting to enter the market today, right, there's always this danger of you getting disrupted faster,
Hmm.
because AI is going to help whoever is coming in with the world knowledge of how things were built in the last so many decades, right?
Right.
So
Right.
you don't have to completely go to chat GPT and say, hey, tell me how this was done, or give me a blueprint, right? So it gives them a very good starting point. I always say, hey, with AI, you are going to get a different starting point than your predecessors, right?
Right.
It
Right.
also gives you a different finish line, which was never possible before. You got to think of these two when you start now, right? You are
Right.
starting at a point, because you are able to iteratively, uh, what do you call, creatively work with the AI to come up with ideas, right? That's where it excels right now. It's
Right.
you call that hallucination. I call that a genius, right? It's giving me all these ideas that's its hallucination that I
Right.
can go test and vet out. So you find a different starting point, right? Not the same way everybody started. So, but it also gives you a different finish point that was impossible before.
Mm.
That's the unique part of this. So yes, I think everybody and anybody should not hesitate to enter and play with this, because who knows, right? We are all trying to expand the market. You might come up with something that is unique because you started somewhere else than me, right?
Mm. Mm. Mm.
So I started this 3 years ago, right? You don't need to start the same way as I started.
Right.
You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. 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 So
So that
started
way,
with a
I think
watch
it's
party.
a space for
I mean, you started with a watch party,
it's a
and here you are
space,
today, serving businesses,
right?
right? So I think definitely
Right.
there's how that's innovation works, right? That's what startups are for, innovation. I think you're spot on there. So I think we are very close to the close time. 5 minutes right there. You've been a bootstrapper, Balaji. 15 years back, the timelines were very different. You could take your time to scale up and do stuff, right? But in today's market, things are moving so fast, right? I mean, you see all the entrants in the market. They come in, they get wiped out, or they really blow it up, right? Or they really go and capture the market, right? So where are you in terms of taking Studiobit from where it is today, and say supposedly you reach a certain pivotal point, right? Are you still going to be bootstrapping? Are you looking at raising funds? What's the what are your thoughts, and what as a team what do you feel about it?
Right. So with respect to Studio Bit, I think I'm me and my co-founders, we are thinking a little differently, because AI indeed has done for everybody in the industry, right? And showcase, and everybody's trying to utilize something. One of the things that you see is that traditional time of first to the market, that's probably is narrowed down. Earlier, maybe you had 2 3 years of lead time. Now people are catching up. Look, even without AI, I was able to catch up, or my team was able to catch up with StreamYard and all those guys, right, within a matter of year or two, right? Imagine what you can do if I had AI when I started, right? So the coding is already getting augmented. So the development cycle So, long story short, yes, I think to compete in this market, especially with AI built into your product line, I think you need to raise some capital to move faster, because GPU shortage is there until, I think, probably another year. We'll see more price competitive units. But now NVIDIA is the only game in town, right? So
Right.
there is that alone forces people to go raise capital to compete.
Yep, yep. I
If
mean,
you're
that,
an AI game like me, right? Yeah.
yeah, and that's a different discussion. I think we should have on that separately, because I've done some analysis. So if you go and look back at Cisco back early 2000s, when they came into the market and internet was catching up, right? They they were on the same trajectory, almost same like what Nvidia is right now, sudden in the last 2 3 years, right? So it's again capitalism at its best is gonna show up in some or the other way, right? People are gonna eat into their margins. Now that we are so close, I'm gonna do some
Right.
rapid fires here with you. So, Judge General, what is a tool, a book that Balaji uses every day, indispensable, cannot live without?
Well, I have to admit, I'm not an avid book reader, but one book that I really like is Thinking Fast and Slow by Daniel Kahneman. That's I think is a very thought provoking and very relevant for the AI age, right? So I recommend anyone
Okay.
who's interested to take a look.
Any tool that you use day in, day out, indispensable for work, for personal?
I mean, I've always been a Microsoft tool set, so Visual Studio Code is always been my best friend, and it helps me in hour of need. So
And what do you do for recreation? It's I know you love tech, you've been doing this, you enjoy it, but then we must be taking breaks, right? What do you do outside, hikes, trails? What is it that gives you distress?
Pre-COVID, my primary what do you call out was kids, right? Soccer. I was pretty much involved with my kids' soccer. I used to referee a lot of games in the weekend, so I enjoy being outdoors. Either take my dog, but post-COVID, much of the time is now spent on the trails.
Okay. And so now that almost wrapping it up, any personal advice that you will leave behind for other founders that are going to watch this, right? That are starting off, what has been your biggest learnings, one or two of them that you can share?
I think, in short, I think no matter how small progress is, it's still progress. Keep working on it. Be persistent about it. Those things don't change. But the times, I think we have to change. And by that, I mean embrace what AI has to offer you in all its capacity. Try to explore, be creative, learn. It's going to give you tremendous cost savings and velocity to get to your MVP or whatever early on you want to visualize the concept. I think it's already here, showing great promise. So use that.
Awesome. So yeah, and just for people that have watched and reached here, we use Studiobit for this session today. I was very nervous at the start using. I have been using Zoom, and Balaji helped me calm down. So yeah, it has worked for 30 minutes. It ran perfectly fine, and I'm sure Balaji, this is gonna be adopted by lots of users like me, right? I think there is a great market out there, and it solves problems, right? Especially with post um, post recording, right? What do you do with it? So one single platform to do all of this, I think, is wonderful, and especially with a multi-billion-dollar company like LinkedIn and Microsoft behind them, and they're not having their own streaming platform, is really, really, really. I mean, I wonder why they don't do it, right? I think that's a huge market out there for you guys. I'm gonna be watching this, and yeah, wish you great luck to you and your team, Balaji. Thanks for the time today, and yeah, we'll carry on and maybe more sessions with AI in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, enjoyed it.